I was on the train the other day sitting next to an elderly gentleman. He seemed pleasant enough, quiet, just sipping his coffee. When his stop came, he stood up, leaving the empty cup right there on the fold-down table. "Are you taking this with you?" I asked him. He just looked at me and said, "No, it's empty." The logic was, well, it was baffling. I reminded him, they brought it on, so maybe you should take it off. He picked it up, clearly annoyed, muttering something under his breath. And then, you won't believe this, he just put it down on the table of a woman sitting in front of him. I heard her say, "That's not a bin." But he just sort of waved his arm dismissively and walked off the train. It was such a small thing, really, a tiny moment. But after 3 years away, it felt incredibly jarring. Like the whole scene was running on a logic I just couldn't understand anymore. It's a weird thing, isn't it? To come home and feel like a stranger in your own country.
That story, yeah, that specific frustrating moment, it just perfectly captures the core of what we're diving into today.
Right.
We're exploring these psychological, I might say sociological challenges people face with what's called reverse culture shock.
Yeah.
Your experience coming back from somewhere like Japan, which is very collectivist, to, say, the UK or the US, which are highly individualistic, well, that creates this really sharp friction.
It felt psychological.
Definitely.
Wow.
The effect is psychological, but the roots, they're sociological. It's about these incompatible cultural programs clashing in everyday life, like with that man on the train.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because we all hear about culture shock going abroad, right? But coming back, that hits differently.
It really does.
So our mission here is to explore that feeling of alienation, that sense that the rules of the game, the ones you thought you knew, have somehow changed while you were away. We're really digging into the stark contrast between these deeply ingrained cultural values, collective responsibility versus individual expression, and how that stuff shows up in public life.
And how it reshapes you ultimately.
Exactly. How it changes your sense of self, where you belong. We're looking at how that tiny, frustrating train moment connects to, well, much bigger things like national policy and how places are run.
And what's so crucial to get right from the start is that the place you left, structurally, it hasn't really changed much.
Right, the country's the same.
But you've internalized a fundamentally different set of expectations about society, about civic life.
So that gentleman on the train,
he was operating on a purely individualistic logic, right? His convenience trumped the shared space. And that feels jarring because you're now operating, at least partly, by a different code, one based on collective comfort, order.
taking your rubbish with you.
Exactly. That clash, that dissonance, that's the blueprint for reverse culture shock.
Which brings us to this idea you mentioned, the shock of the familiar.
Precisely. Reverse culture shock, fundamentally, is that deep emotional confusion, that feeling of disconnect when you return home after being away for a long time.
It's disorienting.
More so, often, than the initial culture shock. Because you expect home to feel like home. You expect familiarity.
But it doesn't always.
No. Instead, you hit this wall of, disconnect. It feels like something fundamental is off. Not everyone gets it, mind you.
Sure.
But for those who do, it's a really complex, sometimes quite lonely feeling.
I found the notes on specific social cues fascinating because they show how these tiny behaviors can add up to a massive shock. Like one person coming back to the U.S. from Japan was immediately struck by the smiling. Just everyone smiling all the time.
It sounds trivial, doesn't it? Smiling.
Yeah, but it represents a huge social shift.
It's profound. In the U.S., smiling at a stranger, at a cashier, it's almost automatic. It's expected. It's a nonverbal signal of friendliness, right? Engagement.
Social lubrication, you called it?
Pretty much. It reassures people, makes interactions feel smooth, cordial. It's like performing accessibility.
Okay, but then you've spent years somewhere like Japan, where emotional reserve, maybe even a bit of civil inattention, acknowledging someone's there without demanding interaction is the norm.
Right.
And suddenly you're faced with this constant, almost mandated performance of happiness. It feels, shocking.
It does, because in Japan, as the sources note, smiling is often more reserved. For genuine happiness, maybe specific rituals like bowing, or for photos, not usually for strangers on the street.
So seeing everyone beaming constantly can feel overwhelming, unnatural.
All of the above. maybe even intrusive. In a more reserved culture, that kind of overt emotional display in public might signal something's wrong, abnormality perhaps.
And you've adapted.
You've adapted to a social landscape where emotional neutrality is kind of the default setting in public.
Yeah.
Stepping back into the West's expectation of performed, constant friendliness, it's a complete flip of a basic social cue you've learned.
And it's not just faces, is it? It's appearance, too. The way people dress.
Oh, absolutely. Another major source of shock. You've got these two wildly different standards for how you present yourself in public.
So in Japan.
There's this strong, widely shared focus on looking, nice, tidy, put together, maybe more formal, even just to pop to the shops.
And it's not just vanity.
Not really, no. It reflects this core idea of respect for the public space and for the people you're sharing it with. How you look is kind of an acknowledgement of the collective.
Okay. And then you land back home, say, in the US or UK.
And the default uniform is jeans, t-shirts, sneakers, maybe sweatpants.
Which, after Japan, can feel jarringly casual.
Extremely. It can look, as one person put it, like people are almost competing to dress down, prioritizing personal comfort and self-expression way above any kind of polished presentation for the community.
It feels like a different level of effort is expected, or maybe not expected.
Exactly. The cultural message shifts. It goes from your appearance as a nod to social respect to my body, my clothes, my choice, pure individual comfort and autonomy.
Which connects to another thing people mention, small talk.
Ah, yes. The sheer volume of it, particularly in the U.S.
After you've adapted to a culture where maybe silence, managing space carefully, just being reserved. That's how you handle crowded city life. Then coming back to this constant expectation to fill every gap with chat, it can feel genuinely overwhelming, alienating even.
You can feel like work, can it? Like social labor. Small talk works in individualistic places because it reassures people, lowers barriers.
In Japan.
That lubrication, that social ease, it's often achieved differently through predictable, silent adherence to the rules. Don't litter, don't block the door, keep your physical space contained.
So when you come home, you realize your own culture gets that order through, constant talking, high volume social stuff.
Which is the total opposite of the reserve you've maybe internalized. It all adds up. That feeling of being overloaded, constantly a step out of sync.
So the small talk, the casual clothes, those are the personal irritations, the microshocks. But does this culture clash play out bigger? Like on a massive scale? Basic civic stuff.
Oh, absolutely. If we zoom out from you feeling awkward, we see those same deep values shaping civic action or inaction, especially around shared spaces. And waste.
Right, the rubbish thing.
This is where those cultural centers of gravity collectivist versus individualistic really drive public behavior in starkly different ways.
And the prime example of the collectivist way, the one everyone knows now, is probably the Japanese football fans.
The 2022 World Cup, yes. Globally famous behavior. Win, lose, or draw, didn't matter. They stayed behind long after the whistle.
To clean up their section meticulously, putting rubbish in blue bags they brought themselves.
And the crucial insight there, sociologically speaking, is that they didn't see it as special. It wasn't heroic. It was just normal.
The baseline.
Exactly. The coach, Hajime Moriyasu, he put it perfectly. He said, for Japanese people, this is just the normal thing to do. When you leave, you have to leave a place cleaner than it was before. That's the education we have been taught.
Wow, that's the education.
It's an internalized code. Your actions are judged by how they affect the shared environment. It's about preventing collective shame, reinforcing collective pride. It's built in.
An internalized infrastructure of responsibility. Okay, now let's contrast that sharply with what we sometimes see in a very individualistic setting, like the UK, especially when things got stressed.
Right. The perfect contrast probably happened in spring 2021. COVID lockdowns eased up.
Everyone rushed outside.
Desperate for air, for social contact, parks across the UK, Leeds, London, Sheffield, even quiet beauty spots were mobbed. And the result, well, it wasn't pretty.
A breakdown of civic behavior, you called it.
That's putting it mildly. People left behind literal mountains of rubbish. Councils had to send special teams out the next day.
And the public reaction wasn't about, say, lack of bins, was it? It was moral outrage.
Entirely. Commentators, people online, they all blamed selfish people. It was framed as individual moral failing.
Which highlights that core cultural difference, right?
Yeah.
That behavioral scientists point to.
Absolutely. In individualistic cultures, UK, US, the default thinking for many is often, I have a right to do what I think is right.
Like someone else gets paid to clean up my mess.
Essentially, yes. There's a clear split between my action and the collective consequence. So trying to change behavior by appealing to some inherent collective duty cleanup because it's the normal thing, it's just not likely to work as well.
Because there's no immediate penalty.
Often, yes. No visible sanction means the individual's immediate desire, convenience, the path of least resistance, which is just dropping the litter, wins out.
Okay, so this brings up a really critical point about trying to change behavior, the whole nudge idea. If the basic operating system is individualistic, you can't just use the collectivist playbook.
You absolutely cannot. You have to approach it differently. You have to find that sweet spot, that overlap between what benefits the individual and what benefits the group.
So like in the UK, individualistic, yes, but still values things like social fairness. Fair play.
Exactly. You have to tailor the intervention to those specific local values. It's not one size fits all.
So successful change needs to balance maybe personal gain, saving money on your energy bill, for example, with a social benefit, like confirming you're a good citizen who's doing their bit for everyone else.
Precisely. You need to tap into that unique local blend. Maybe it's individual pride and social justice, as one study put it.
And we see this in action with things like trying to get people to use less energy at home.
Yes, classic example. Telling Americans they'd save money. Worked well. Direct appeal to individual financial benefit. Efficiency.
Makes sense.
But try that same message in the UK. Didn't work nearly as well. It didn't stick.
Why not? Because it was missing that fair play angle,
Yeah.
the social validation.
That seems to be it. The company running the trial found they had to change tack. Instead of just focusing on money, they gave people a private reward.
Private, not public.
No, discreet, like a little badge on their bill saying, congrats, you're in the top 10% of energy-efficient households in your area.
Ah, interesting.
And that was highly effective. Why? It hit multiple buttons. It satisfied individual pride. I'm doing well, I'm efficient.
Taps into wanting to be seen as competent, responsible.
Right. But keeping it private respected that cultural tendency towards maybe not boasting, self-effacement, while also confirming their actions helped the wider community. They were playing fair.
That's fascinating. So the nudge worked because it respected individual pride and confirmed they were upholding that unspoken social contract.
Exactly. It proves the core difference isn't that people in one culture are inherently better than another. It's that the messaging has to be custom fit to resonate with the specific values and beliefs of that audience.
The collectivists just do it for society. Message doesn't land the same way in a culture driven more by individual status and rights.
Precisely. And that detailed look at waste, responsibility. It leads us perfectly into our next deep dive. How Japan actively manages that collectivist drive for order, comfort, efficiency, especially in a super critical, incredibly dense space.
Tokyo's railway system.
Exactly. This is where you see a really sophisticated, ongoing effort to basically engineer harmony among millions of people crammed together.
And the pressure's immense, right? We're talking about Greater Tokyo, over 30 million people.
Served by 2,500 kilometers of track. The system runs beyond capacity constantly. Shinjuku Station alone, famously the world's busiest.
Is how many?
Over 3.5 million passengers every single day.
Wow, that scale just demands order, doesn't it? Near impossible levels of order.
Because when you have that density, the tiniest hiccup, a backpack snagging on a closing door, someone stopping dead to check their phone, it doesn't just affect them.
It ripples through the whole system.
Exponential delays, huge economic impact. Time isn't just money there, it's the city's structural integrity. So the railway companies have long used media, specifically visual and verbal reminders, to try and shape behavior.
Which brings us to the manner posters.
The primary tool, yes. Company-issued posters, often very stylized, reminding people about good etiquette on the trains.
And they're not new, right? This goes way back.
Oh yeah, back to at least the Taishu era. So 1912 to 1926. Managing behavior on crowded trains has been a thing, a genre of public communication for over a century.
Okay, so what kind of behaviors are these posters targeting? What are the main themes?
You can boil them down to 3 core themes, and they're all intertwined: efficiency, comfort, and safety.
Efficiency makes sense given the delays.
It's absolutely paramount. Temporal order is critical. And get this statistic. Passenger actions, things like rushing the doors, getting stuck, they cause over 60% of all train delays under 10 minutes in Tokyo.
60%. Passengers themselves.
The majority of minor system failures, it starkly shows how individual actions, or maybe lack of discipline, directly undermine the collective system.
And efficiency isn't just time, is it? It's space, too.
Historically, hugely so. Back in the super crowded 70s and 80s rush hours, the fight for space was so intense.
Yeah.
Manor posters actually advised people not to wear overly thick coats in winter.
Seriously, because coats take up too much room.
The idea was, that the collective bulk of all those slightly thicker coats might actually take up enough space to prevent one extra person squeezing on, impacting the whole system's capacity. That's an incredible level of managing the commuter collective.
Wow. Okay, so that's efficiency. What about comfort?
Comfort is key because the companies see these posters as part of customer service. They're tackling what sociologists call mundane misconduct.
Meaning?
Everyday annoyances. Littering, putting bags on seats, loud phone calls, behaviors that cause irritation, maybe anger, but not actual fear.
The stuff that grinds your gears on a commute.
Exactly. And these poster campaigns are almost entirely reactive. They're driven by customer complaints.
So passengers complain, and the company has to be seen doing something.
Precisely. Passengers basically delegate the management of their distress and discomfort to the rail company. They demand the company enforces a comfortable environment, and the company feels it's their duty to respond to show they're listening.
Okay, efficiency, comfort, and the third was safety.
Right, which is more straightforward. Linking behavior to preventing accidents. Reminders like stay behind the yellow line, hold the handrail on the escalator. Pretty standard stuff.
But the tricky part for the companies must be how they communicate all this without annoying the very customers they're trying to serve.
That's the core operational paradox. How do you regulate behavior without offending paying passengers? Given the goal is customer satisfaction, harmony, they actively avoid being authoritarian.
So no big do not signs, no angry red circles with slashes through them.
Generally, no, because that direct imperative command, it risks flipping the script on the company-customer relationship.
How so?
Well, imagine a sharp command on a poster. A customer, especially one maybe used to more Western ideas of service, might think, who are you to order me around? Is this how you treat customers?
Right, it could backfire, generate more complaints than the original bad behavior.
Exactly. So instead, they rely on a much softer, persuasive style. They often use quite sophisticated advertising techniques.
To kind of disarm the message.
You got it. Things like humor, puns, cultural references everyone gets, and the strategic, widespread use of kawa.
Cuteness.
Yes, cute illustrations, often in a manga style. It's a deliberate choice to sugarcoat the regulatory message, makes it feel less like a lecture from on high.
Let's pause on kawa, though, because that feels very culturally specific. Why is using cuteness more effective than just saying, don't do this?
Kawa is really deeply woven into Japanese adult communication, even in official context. It acts as a cultural tool, a way to smooth rough edges, minimize potential conflict. It allows serious or critical messages to be delivered without placing direct, harsh blame. The cuteness creates a kind of buffer between the authority figure, the railway company, and the rule itself.
So it feels less like an order.
And more like a gentle, maybe even communal suggestion or plea. A stern, serious poster might just annoy people or be ignored. But a cute character looking a bit sad because someone's taking up too much space, it's harder to resent.
The style itself is non-threatening.
Right. And the designers know this. They know if a poster feels too preachy or aggressive, people will just tune it out completely. The cuteness keeps them engaged, makes the medicine easier to swallow.
So you end up with this really interesting double interpretation of what these posters are actually doing. On one side, you have scholars looking at it and saying, this is soft control. It's subtle psychology to nudge behavior.
Cultivating awareness of what's irregular.
And maybe even getting passengers to police each other.
Yeah.
That idea of lateral surveillance, implicitly asking you to notice, maybe even judge, your fellow commuters' behavior.
That's certainly one academic take. But then you have the crucial counterpoint. What the company professionals, the people actually making these posters, say.
And they see it differently.
Often, yes. They tend to frame the posters almost purely as a customer service technology. Meaning they're driven almost entirely by customer feedback. Complaints come in, posters go up. The main goal, interviewees often admitted, isn't necessarily even changing behavior effectively in the short term.
Wait, they doubted the posters actually worked? That seems weird, given the effort.
It is remarkable, isn't it? But yes, for many, the posters function primarily as proof. Proof that the company is doing something about passenger etiquette issues.
So it's about managing perception.
Exactly. It meets the customer's expectation that reminders like this should exist. The posters become a visible, almost ritualistic symbol that the company is earnestly engaged, that it cares about passenger comfort.
even if the person next to you keeps doing the annoying thing.
Right. The poster says, "We hear you. We acknowledge the problem. We are performing our duty to address it." It's managing customer feelings and demonstrating responsiveness, perhaps more than it's actually stopping bad behavior on the spot.
So the posters are kind of a social lubricant themselves, aimed at the complainer, to keep them satisfied the company is trying.
That's a very plausible interpretation based on what the professionals involved indicated. It's about showing earnest engagement.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. That initial feeling, the jolt you described on the train coming home.
Yeah.
It all seems to boil down to this fundamental clash of expectations, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How we act in public, littering, smiling, how much space we take up, who's responsible for what.
Absolutely. That feeling of alienation, of home, suddenly feeling foreign, it arises because the subtle, deeply ingrained rules of conduct you absorbed while you were away
In the collectivist system, like Japan.
are just completely incompatible, or at least feel that way, with the rules operating back home in a more individualistic culture.
The place didn't change, but I did.
You're the variable. You moved, you adapted, you fundamentally rewired parts of your internal operating system.
And that has lasting implications, doesn't it?
It really does. Living long-term in a place like Japan, it genuinely reshapes your sense of self, your sense of belonging. You learn, consciously or not, to sometimes subordinate your individual impulse to what the collective needs, whether that's cleaning a stadium seat or making yourself smaller on a train.
So when you come back,
You come back with this more fluid, maybe multifaceted identity. You're constantly trying to negotiate between these two different operating systems in your head.
and that feeling of strangeness.
It's the dawning realization that the simple, static idea of home you might have carried with you, it might not really exist for you anymore, not in the same way.
So the big takeaway here seems to be that this kind of long-term immersion creates a sort of hybrid self.
Yeah.
You're not fully one thing or the other.
You end up holding this complex, blended internal citizenship. You don't belong 100% to your birth culture anymore, but maybe not 100% to the one you lived in either.
You're navigating life with this mixed set of internal rules.
Which makes walking through any public space, anywhere, a constant negotiation of potentially incompatible values. And that's why the familiar, the place you thought you knew best, can suddenly feel permanently, fascinatingly foreign.